There is one issue that will define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other, and that is the urgent threat of climate change. These words of Barack Obama hold true not only for the United States of America, but for every other country on this planet at this current moment. I am Keane Rodrigues, and along with Denley Rebello and Rahul Patil, present to you our work on the changing climate. The purpose of this presentation is to shed light on the immediate threat that climate change poses on us and to provide recommendations to tackle this particular issue. The data that has been used for this analysis is a collection of various greenhouse gases and the effect that they have had over multiple countries over the years. The analytical tool that we will be using for this analysis is IBM Watson. IBM Watson is one of the most widely used analytical tools, and we chose it mainly because of the low complexity of its user interface and its easy to comprehend outputs. IBM Watson also makes it very easy to process raw and unstructured data. IBM Watson is also very useful when it comes to dealing with large amounts of data. After thorough analysis of this raw data, we have come up with various visualizations, recommendations, and conclusions. Now, moving on to our first visualization, we can see that the values of greenhouse gases are compared by the year. A bar graph is used for visualization, and darker shades represent more intensity in the emission of the greenhouse gases. It can be clearly seen by the darker shade of blue that in the year 2010, the emission of greenhouse gases was clearly very high. As these shades of blue lighten throughout the years, we can very well observe that the emission of greenhouse gases has clearly reduced over the years, with the year 2015 showing the lowest intensity among all the years. This fall in the intensity of greenhouse gases shows that the world takes the idea of climate change seriously and is working towards it. In our second visualization, the emphasis is on the gas CO2 and it is compared by year and country. This graph also, like its predecessor, shows that there is a decrease in the usage of CO2 over the years, and at the same time, it also highlights the countries that have excessive CO2 usage. The countries Australia, Canada, and Belgium show the highest emission rates of CO2 when compared to the other countries. Our next visualization makes use of a line graph to show the trend of nitrous oxide for each country over the years. The countries Australia, Canada, and Belgium are again shown to be the highest emitters of nitrous oxide. Most countries do not even cross the emission threshold of 10,000, whereas Belgium, Canada, and Australia each have emissions as high as 15,000, 20,000, and 35,000 respectively. Our next visualization shows the breakdown of methane by each year. This representation was included to showcase the fall of the methane emission from 31,000 in the year 2010 to 29,000 in the year 2015. This is another example of the awareness of greenhouse gases in the world and the efforts that have been taken towards its reduction. This visualization demonstrates the values for nitrous trifluoride and compares it by year and country. This visualization was included to show how different gases affect different countries. The country Bulgaria in the year 2012 has heavy emission of greenhouse gases. In this representation, this is significantly higher than the emission of Australia, Canada, or Belgium, which had high usage in CO2 and nitrous trifluoride in the previous representations. This is to show that controlling the emission of a particular gas may not be effective across all countries. The root gases for each country will have to be determined and targeted individually. This visualization gives an account of the effect of sulfur hexafluoride on each country and by year. Here again, Australia, Canada, and Belgium are the highest emitters of this gas as compared to any other country. But at the same time, Austria, which had not shown heavy amounts of emission up until now, shows significant amount of emission in this gas as well. This only goes to strengthen the argument made for the previous visualization. This visualization gives an account of the perfluorocarbons. Here, it is evident that Bulgaria has a very high emission rate as compared to the other countries. Australia has moderate emission of perfluorocarbons, whereas Belgium and Canada have zero emission of perfluorocarbons. This visualization gives an account of the contribution of HFC over each country. Here, we can see that Australia and Bulgaria both have very high emission of HFC, whereas Austria and Canada have comparatively lower emissions. After thorough analysis of the data, we have now deduced that Australia and Canada are significant contributors to greenhouse gas emission. We find the reasons for this to be 1. Australia and Canada are both developed countries and are home to the largest industries in the world. This alone results in large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. These countries are also home to the largest cities in the world, like Sydney, Melbourne, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, etc. High population in these cities indirectly results in more number of personal cars and other greenhouse gas emitting vehicles. The emission of greenhouse gases from Bulgaria and Belgium can also be blamed upon the increasing number of population which these countries have seen over the past few years. We now move on to the health effects and the issues that greenhouse gases cause. High levels in most greenhouse gases can lead to various breathing problems. There is an increased likelihood of respiratory problems like wheezing, coughing, flu, and bronchitis. Decrease in the levels of oxygen may also result in suffocation. Greenhouse gases are the strongest influencing factors of smog and acid rain. HFC is toxic and carcinogenic. In high concentration, it may even cause heart problems, unconsciousness, and even lead to coma or death. We now move on to our propositions. We recommend using social media as a means to spread awareness about climate change. As most of the younger generation today is in social media, this would be a very good platform to bring this problem into limelight. A second proposition is to use appliances with Energy Star ratings on them. This will not only help with greenhouse gas emission reductions, but it will also help with electricity bill reductions. We also propose switching to renewable sources of energy in place of the traditional ones that we use today. Doing this would greatly hinder the acceleration of greenhouse gases. We have reached the end of this presentation, and in conclusion, we would like to say, always choose to recycle your waste, always choose green over gas, and always choose electricity over fuel. We have inherited this beautiful planet, and it is our responsibility to pass it on better to our future generations. Thank you so much for your time on this presentation, and I would like to end it with a small quote. I always wondered why somebody won't do something about global warming. I then realized I am that somebody.